Maria walked into the jewelry store quietly, her shoes clicking against the shiny marble floor. She looked simple. Plain clothes, a small handbag, and tired eyes. To others, she didn't look like the kind of woman who belonged there. The bright lights reflected off diamonds and gold, but none of that light seemed to reach her. The moment she stepped in, the sales staff noticed her, and their smiles faded. One of them whispered to another, "She must be lost." Maria didn't say anything. She only looked around slowly, admiring the rings and necklaces in the glass cases. Her fingers brushed the edge of the counter with a kind of respect, almost like she was touching something sacred. The young salesgirl Tina sighed before walking over. Her tone was polite on the surface but cold underneath. "Can I help you, ma'am?" she asked, glancing at Maria's plain dress and old shoes. "Yes," Maria said softly. "I'm looking for something special. Maybe a diamond necklace." Tina blinked in surprise, then smirked. "Our diamond pieces are quite expensive," she said in a tone that sounded more like a warning than information. Maria just smiled kindly and nodded. "That's all right. I'd like to see them, please." Tina hesitated but took out a few necklaces from the display. She placed them on the counter as if she were wasting her time. Maria leaned forward, her eyes sparkling. Not because of the diamonds, but because she seemed to genuinely appreciate the beauty in each piece. At the far end of the store, the manager noticed what was happening. He frowned and whispered to another worker, "She doesn't look like a buyer. Make it quick and focus on real customers." The others laughed softly. Maria heard them, but she didn't react. She only asked gentle questions about the cuts, the designs, the craftsmanship. Her voice carried calm confidence, but no one paid attention. A wealthy couple entered the store just then. They were loud, wearing designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. The staff rushed toward them like bees to honey, leaving Maria standing alone by the counter. Tina quickly excused herself, muttering, "Excuse me, I need to help them." Maria stood there silently, her hands folded. She looked at the glittering diamond set left on the counter, the same one no one thought she could afford. She whispered to herself, "Beautiful work. They must have spent many hours perfecting it." Her voice carried appreciation, not anger. An older man sweeping the floor nearby noticed her. He was the janitor, Eli. He gave her a small, respectful nod. "Don't take it to heart, ma'am," he said quietly. "They do that to anyone who doesn't look rich." Maria smiled gently. "Thank you," she said. "I understand. People often forget that real value isn't always visible." Tina returned briefly, trying to hide her irritation. "Do you still want to look around?" she asked flatly. Maria nodded. "Yes, I'd like to see the other section too. The ones with sapphires." Tina rolled her eyes but led her there anyway. Maria walked gracefully behind her, every movement calm and deliberate. While they moved, the wealthy couple laughed loudly at something the manager said. The whole store echoed with their voices. Maria looked around and saw how everyone treated them, with respect, warmth, even admiration. It was a strange kind of performance, she thought. When Maria asked for the price of a sapphire bracelet, Tina barely looked at her. "This one? It's around $20,000, she said. "But maybe you'd like to see something simpler." Maria smiled again, her eyes kind but unreadable. "No," she said softly. "This one is perfect. I'll come back for it." Tina forced a laugh. "Of course," she said under her breath, already turning away. Maria nodded politely and started walking toward the door. The janitor, Eli, opened it for her. "Thank you," she told him. "You're the only one here who remembered how to treat a person." Eli smiled sadly. "I just do my job, ma'am." Maria looked back at the store one last time. Inside, the diamonds sparkled under bright lights, but the air felt cold. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the brightest places have the darkest hearts." Then she stepped out into the street, disappearing into the crowd. Inside, Tina shrugged and said to her coworker, "She's not coming back." They laughed together, but what they didn't know was that Maria wasn't just an ordinary woman. Beneath that plain dress, behind that calm smile, was a story none of them could imagine. The quiet woman they ignored had the power to change everything, and tomorrow she would. The next day came, and the jewelry store was just as busy as before. The lights glittered, the floor gleamed, and the workers stood ready with perfect smiles. Fake smiles, but good enough for the customers who looked rich. No one thought about the plain woman from yesterday. To them, she was just another nobody who wandered in and wasted their time. But they were wrong. At noon, Maria walked past the same street again. She stopped for a moment in front of the jewelry store window. The same diamond necklace sparkled behind the glass just as it had the day before. She smiled softly and stepped inside once more. The bell above the door chimed and Tina's smile froze the second she saw her. "Oh, it's you again," Tina muttered under her breath, but loud enough for another clerk to hear. They both exchanged looks of amusement. "Maybe she came to ask for a discount," the other clerk whispered, trying not to laugh. Maria didn't react. Her calm expression stayed the same. "Good afternoon," she said politely. "I came back to look at the sapphire bracelet." Tina sighed but forced her professional tone. "Of course," she said, walking to the display case. "This one again, right?" Maria nodded gently. "Yes, I was thinking about it all night. The color is deep like the ocean before a storm." Tina blinked, surprised by her words. There was poetry in the way Maria spoke, elegance in her voice that didn't match her plain clothes. Sure," Tina said awkwardly, placing the bracelet on the counter. "It's 20,000 like I said yesterday." Maria picked it up carefully, turning it under the light. The gem sparkled, but her eyes held something even brighter, a quiet knowing, a power that came from peace. While she examined it, 2 other women entered the store. They wore expensive heels, shining jewelry, and designer handbags. Instantly, the staff switched their focus. The laughter returned, the tone changed. "Welcome, ladies," the manager said warmly. "We just got new arrivals from Italy." Maria was forgotten again, standing alone at the counter with the sapphire bracelet still in her hand. The manager noticed her after a moment and frowned. "Tina," he whispered harshly, "don't waste time on her again. She's not buying anything." "But sir, I said move," he snapped. Tina hesitated but obeyed, running off to assist the wealthy women. Maria stood quietly, listening to their laughter echo through the store. One of the new customers, a tall woman in red, looked at Maria and smirked. "You know, some people just like to pretend they belong here," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The staff laughed nervously, not daring to stop her. Maria didn't move. She placed the bracelet back on the counter carefully, her face calm as ever. Then she looked up and said softly, "It's a lovely piece. Thank you for showing it." Her tone carried dignity, not anger. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door she saw the janitor, Eli, again. He was sweeping near the entrance, keeping his eyes low. When he saw her, he gave her a nod of quiet respect. "Back again, ma'am?" he asked kindly. "Yes," she said. "I wanted to see how people behave when they think no one's watching." Eli frowned slightly, not understanding, but something in her tone made him curious. "You're too kind to put up with this," he said. Maria smiled. "Kindness is a choice, not a weakness." As she walked out, the staff whispered behind her. "She's crazy," one clerk said. "Who comes here twice with no money?" "Maybe she just wants attention," another added. The manager crossed his arms and muttered, "If she shows up again, don't let her waste our time." But the janitor kept looking at the door even after she left. Something about the woman's calm, her quiet confidence, it didn't fit with what everyone else thought of her. He had seen many people walk through that store, but no one carried themselves like she did. There was no anger, no pride, just peace. It was strange. Outside, Maria stood near the window for a few seconds, watching the people inside. She didn't look hurt. She looked thoughtful. The reflection of diamonds sparkled across her face as she whispered, "Tomorrow I'll show them what real value means." The next morning, the store would open its doors again. The workers would stand ready, not knowing that their lives were about to change forever. The plain woman they ignored wasn't who they thought she was, and the lesson she was about to teach them would be remembered long after the jewels lost their shine. The morning sun lit up the streets, and the jewelry store opened its glass doors once again. Everything looked the same, the shiny counters, the soft music, the fake smiles. But something unseen had changed. The air carried a quiet tension, though no one could say why. Maybe it was because the janitor, Eli, kept glancing at the door every few minutes as if expecting someone. Around noon, the bell above the door chimed. Heads turned. Maria walked in again. This was the 3rd day in a row. The same plain woman in a simple dress and worn shoes. No jewelry, no makeup. Just that calm face and gentle smile that somehow made her look like she knew a secret the world didn't. Tina groaned softly. "Oh no, she's back again," she whispered to her co-worker. The manager overheard and rolled his eyes. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "Don't waste time. If she asks about something expensive again, just tell her it's reserved." But Maria didn't go to the counter this time. She quietly walked around the store looking at every section. Her steps were slow, deliberate. Her eyes didn't just look at the jewelry, they looked at the people. She noticed every smirk, every whisper, every dismissive glance. At one point, Tina laughed with another staff member near the cash counter. "Imagine she keeps coming like she owns the place," she said softly. Maria was close enough to hear it. But instead of reacting, she simply smiled and nodded toward them. That polite, warm smile made them both uncomfortable, as if she was the one pitying them. After a while, Maria stopped near the glass case where Eli was cleaning the floor nearby. "Good morning, Eli," she greeted kindly. He straightened up, surprised. "Good morning, ma'am. You remembered my name?" "Of course," she said. "You were the only one who remembered my humanity." Eli looked embarrassed and wiped his hands on his uniform. "I just did what anyone should." Maria looked around the store. "And yet not everyone does," she said softly. Her eyes paused on Tina and the manager, who were now busy entertaining another wealthy customer. Maria's expression remained calm, but her eyes carried a strange depth, part sadness, part wisdom. She turned back to Eli and asked quietly, "Do you like working here?" Eli hesitated. "I need the job, ma'am. I don't have many choices. The pay's not bad, but the people—" "Well, you've seen how they treat others." Maria nodded. "Yes, I've seen enough." Just then, a loud laugh came from the counter. The manager was boasting about a new diamond shipment. "These are real class," he told the rich customer. "Only for those who can afford luxury." His tone made the word afford sound sharp and prideful. Maria's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Eli. "Tell me," she asked gently, "if someone walked in here wearing old clothes but spoke with respect, shouldn't they still deserve respect in return?" Eli sighed. "They should, ma'am. But most people here only see the clothes, not the person inside them." Maria smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time someone opened their eyes. She turned and walked to the center of the store. The floor was shining under the white lights and all eyes shifted toward her again. The other workers pretended to be busy, but they were watching her closely. She slowly reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. She opened it and started writing something. No one could see what it was, but her hand moved with calm purpose. The manager frowned, suspicious. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said loudly. "Is there something I can help you with today?" Maria looked up. "No," she said politely. "I'm just observing. Your store has quite an interesting atmosphere." He forced a laugh. "We do our best to maintain high standards." Maria's eyes softened. "I can see that." Then she closed her notebook, placed it carefully in her bag, and added, "You'll be seeing me again soon. I have something to finalize." The words confused everyone. "Finalize what?" the manager asked, but she didn't answer. As Maria turned to leave, she passed by Eli again. "You have a kind heart," she told him. "Keep it that way. Kindness shines brighter than any diamond here." Eli smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma'am. But are you really coming back?" Maria paused at the door and looked back at the store, at the diamonds, the mirrors, the people who had judged her. "Yes," she said softly. "Tomorrow things will look very different." Then she left, her figure fading into the crowd outside. Inside, Tina shook her head. "What a strange woman," the manager smirked. "She talks like she's some queen or something." Eli quietly went back to sweeping, but his thoughts wouldn't rest. Something about her calmness, her eyes, her words, they didn't belong to an ordinary person. That night, Maria sat in her apartment overlooking the city lights. She took out her phone and made a call. "Yes," she said softly, "I've made my observations. Proceed as planned. We'll visit the store tomorrow." Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with authority. On her desk beside a cup of tea lay a file with the store's name printed on it. Evaluation report. Purchase review for elite partnership program. Tomorrow, the plain woman they mocked would walk back into that same store. Not as a customer, but as the woman who owned the company deciding its future. The jewelry store opened to a new morning of luxury and laughter. Crystal lights glimmered, diamonds sparkled, and perfumes mixed in the air like pride and wealth. The staff wore their best smiles again, but there was an unspoken nervousness. They couldn't forget the strange, plain woman who had visited 3 days in a row. At 10 o'clock sharp, the glass doors slid open. Every head turned. Maria walked in again, but this time she wasn't alone. Two men in elegant black suits followed closely behind her. Their shoes shined, their posture perfect, and in their hands were sleek leather briefcases. The moment they entered, the atmosphere shifted. Conversation stopped, and the faint sound of the store's background music filled the silence. Tina, arranging a tray of necklaces, froze mid-motion. Her lips parted slightly. The manager straightened his tie and came forward, his voice uncertain. "Good morning, ma'am. How may we help you?" Maria smiled politely, her same gentle, calm smile. "Good morning," she said softly. "I'd like to speak to your manager." The manager blinked in confusion. "I'm the manager," he said quickly. "Perfect," Maria replied. "Let's discuss the purchase I mentioned earlier." Tina and the others stared in disbelief. Purchase? She had no shopping bags, no expensive outfit, nothing to suggest she could even afford a single ring. And yet the way she stood there, calm, confident, and graceful, made her seem different. One of the suited men stepped forward and placed a folder on the counter. "These are the preliminary documents, ma'am," he said quietly. His voice was deep and respectful. The manager frowned, curiosity mixing with confusion. "Documents for what exactly?" Maria tilted her head slightly. "For the acquisition of several items," she said, "including the diamond set I viewed 3 days ago." Tina felt her heart skip. "The one worth over $1 million?" she whispered. Maria turned her gaze toward her and smiled. "Yes, that one." The manager's fake smile twitched. "Ah, well, of course. Let me, prepare that for you." As he hurried off, the other employees exchanged looks of disbelief. They whispered among themselves, wondering who she really was. The plain woman they mocked was now being treated like royalty. Maria slowly walked toward the display case with the diamond necklace. Her reflection sparkled in the glass, the same reflection that had been ignored before. She reached out and touched the case lightly. "I told you I'd come back," she whispered almost to herself. Eli, the janitor, stood in the corner watching everything. He couldn't hide his smile. When she noticed him, she gave him a small nod. "Good morning, Eli," she said warmly. He smiled back, feeling proud without knowing why. "Good morning, ma'am." "I see you meant what you said." Maria chuckled softly. "Yes, today will be interesting." The manager returned with nervous energy. "Ma'am, here are the items you requested. Shall we, discuss payment?" Maria's assistants opened the briefcases on the counter. Inside were bank documents and certification papers. The staff gasped. The seal of a major investment firm glimmered on the pages. The manager stammered, I don't understand. Are you representing someone?" Maria turned her calm eyes toward him. "No," she said gently. "I am the one purchasing, and also I am the one your company has been waiting for." The room went silent. "Waiting for?" Tina echoed. Maria nodded slowly. "Yes, I own the Horizon Luxury Group. We're considering partnership acquisitions with selective jewelry chains." Her tone was soft, but her words hit like thunder. This store was one of the candidates. Tina's face drained of color. The manager's legs felt weak. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. You own Horizon?" Maria smiled faintly. "I do, and I wanted to see how your staff treats people, especially those who don't look rich." No one moved. The silence was heavy, filled with regret and shame. Maria continued softly. "Respect cannot depend on appearance. If you only bow to wealth, then you are poor in spirit." She turned to Eli. "But kindness is never wasted," she said warmly. "Eli, you've reminded me that goodness still exists here." Eli stood speechless, blinking back tears. The manager finally found his voice. "Ma'am, please, we didn't mean—" Maria raised her hand slightly. "It's all right," she interrupted. "We all learn, but lessons like this one are expensive." She pointed toward the diamond sets. "I'll take them all. Full payment. But this store will also receive an internal evaluation from our ethics department." Her words carried no anger, just truth, and that made them hit even harder. The staff watched in disbelief as her assistants completed the transaction swiftly. Millions changed hands within minutes. The plain woman they mocked had just spent more than all of them would earn in years. Before leaving, Maria turned back one last time. Her calm eyes swept across the silent faces. "The brightest jewels lose their beauty in unkind hands," she said softly. "Remember that." Then she walked out, the automatic doors opening like curtains to a new scene. The two suited men followed her into the daylight. The staff stood frozen, the echo of her words lingering in the glittering silence. Eli whispered to himself, smiling faintly. She wasn't playing at all. Outside, Maria stepped into a black limousine. As the car pulled away, she looked back through the window at the jewelry store shrinking in the distance. Now, she said softly to her assistant, let's make sure they never treat another soul like that again. And with that, the car disappeared into the sunlight, leaving behind a lesson worth more than all the jewels in the world. The next morning, the jewelry store buzzed like a beehive of nervous energy. No one was laughing now. No one dared whisper jokes. Every worker, from the manager to the newest clerk, stood stiff and silent, replaying yesterday's scene in their minds. The plain woman who walked in quietly and left after spending millions. Her name was on everyone's lips, Maria Vale. Overnight, the news had spread through the city's luxury district. Horizon Luxury Group, one of the country's biggest investors in fashion and fine jewelry, had bought stakes in several high-end stores. The one Maria visited was now rumored to be next. Inside the store, the atmosphere was tense. Tina kept fidgeting with her hands, unable to forget how she'd treated Maria. Every word she had spoken yesterday now felt like a knife twisting in her chest. The manager looked equally pale, constantly checking his watch, afraid she might walk in again. And then, just as the clock struck 11, the glass doors opened. Maria entered once more, but today she looked different. She wore a white silk blouse, her hair neatly tied back, and a diamond pin that caught the light perfectly. She wasn't flashy, but elegant, effortless, and powerful in her calm. Her presence alone made the entire room freeze. Behind her came a group of people in professional attire, 2 men and a woman holding clipboards and tablets. They were clearly part of an official delegation. The manager rushed forward, bowing slightly. "Good morning, Ms. Vale," he said nervously. Maria gave a small, polite smile. "Good morning," she replied. "I hope you're ready for today's assessment." "A assessment?" Tina stammered. Maria turned her head slightly. "Yes," she said. "We're finalizing Horizon's partnership review. My team will be conducting an ethics and service evaluation. After all, luxury means nothing without dignity." Her voice was soft, but every word struck like thunder. The team spread out, inspecting counters, talking to staff, observing the way customers were greeted. The employees tried their best to act perfect, but their guilt hung in the air like perfume that wouldn't fade. Maria walked slowly through the aisles, her heels tapping softly against the marble. When she reached the section where Tina stood, she paused. Tina swallowed hard, lowering her eyes. "Miss Tina," Maria said gently. "Yes, ma'am," Tina whispered. "Do you remember what you told me the first day I came in?" Tina's lips trembled. I'm so sorry, ma'am." "I didn't mean any of it. I judged you by your clothes. It was wrong. I was wrong." Maria nodded slowly, her face calm but unreadable. "Yes, you judged too quickly," she said. "But what matters is whether you learn from it. Tell me, what have you learned?" Tina looked up, eyes watery. "That respect should never depend on money," she said. "And that kindness costs nothing." Maria gave a faint, approving smile. "Good," she said softly. "Then perhaps there's hope." She turned toward the manager next. He was sweating visibly, his fake confidence gone. "And you," she said. "You told your staff not to waste time on me, remember?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I was wrong, Miss Vale, completely wrong. I judged a book by its cover. Please give me another chance." Maria studied him for a moment. Then she said quietly, "A store can sell diamonds and still have a heart made of stone. Don't let that be yours." He nodded rapidly, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. It won't happen again." As Maria's team finished their inspection, Eli walked up shyly, holding his broom. "Ms. Vale?" he said softly. She turned to him with a warm smile, the first genuine one anyone had seen from her that day. "Eli," she said warmly, "I was hoping I'd see you again. I don't know what to say," he said. "I'm just glad you showed them what's right." Maria chuckled softly. "You already did, Eli. You reminded me that not everyone forgets their humanity when surrounded by gold." Then, in front of everyone, she reached into her purse and took out a small envelope. "This is for you," she said, handing it to him. He blinked in confusion. "What is it?" "A job offer," Maria replied. "I need someone honest on my staff. Someone who remembers that people matter more than shine." The entire store went silent. Eli's hands trembled as he opened the envelope and saw the company letterhead, Horizon Luxury Group, personal assistant to the CEO, I don't deserve this, he stammered. Maria smiled kindly. Yes, you do. Because you earned it not with wealth but with kindness. She turned back to the rest of the staff. Remember this day, she said quietly. Diamonds are judged by how they reflect light. People are judged by how they reflect character. Her team finished signing documents and Maria prepared to leave. Before she walked out, she stopped near the door and looked back one last time. Your store will stay in our program, she said. But from now on, I expect it to sparkle with respect, not just gold. Then she nodded once and walked away, followed by her team. The staff stood frozen as the door closed behind her. Tina broke down in tears. The manager wiped his face, whispering, We just met an angel in plain clothes. Eli looked at the letter again, still in disbelief. Outside, Maria stepped into her limousine. Through the glass, the sun lit her face as she whispered to herself, Power isn't in money, it's in how you make others feel small or seen. And with that, she drove away, leaving behind a room full of people who had just witnessed what true wealth looked like, and it wasn't money. The following day dawned bright and golden, but inside the jewelry store, the light felt different, softer, humbler, almost uneasy. Everyone had arrived early, cleaning the counters twice, straightening every piece of jewelry, rehearsing polite greetings. No one dared to laugh or gossip anymore. It was as if the store itself knew it was being watched by fate. At exactly noon, the familiar chime of the glass door echoed. Maria Vale entered again, but this time there was no entourage, no suited assistants, no bodyguards. Just her, calm, graceful, radiant in her simplicity. She wore the same plain dress as the first day she entered. It was as if she wanted to remind them of what they had seen, of who they had failed to see. Every staff member straightened up instantly. Tina stepped forward, her voice trembling. Good afternoon, Ms. Vale, she said. Welcome back, Maria smiled gently. Good afternoon, she said. I came to make one last purchase. The words rippled through the room. The manager hurried over, his tone filled with anxious respect. Of course, Ms. Vale, anything you wish to see? Maria looked around the store. No need, she said softly. I already know what I want. She pointed to the same display that had first caught her attention, the diamond necklace and sapphire bracelet she'd admired when everyone had mocked her. I'll take all the pieces from that collection, she said. The manager blinked. All of them? Yes, she replied. Every single one. The silence that followed was electric. No one moved. Then slowly, the staff began pulling out the jewelry from the case. Diamonds glittered like frozen stars, sapphires shone like deep oceans. They placed each piece carefully on the velvet counter, their hands shaking slightly. Maria reached into her purse and handed the manager a folder. Full payment has been processed through Horizon's account. You can confirm with your finance team. The manager nodded quickly, his voice barely steady. Of course, ma'am, of course. As he hurried to check, Tina looked at Maria, her eyes full of guilt and awe. Ms. Vale, why do you still choose to buy from us after how we treated you? Maria looked at her kindly. Because forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, she said softly. And because I wanted to give all of you something more valuable than punishment, a chance to change. Tina's eyes filled with tears. The manager returned, breathless. Confirmed, ma'am. The transaction went through. It's millions. Maria nodded calmly. Good. Then I'd like to make one small request. Anything, he said immediately. Maria turned to Eli, who stood quietly in the corner, still unsure how to act around her. Eli, she said warmly, come here, please. He stepped forward, his broom still in hand. Yes, ma'am? Maria smiled gently. You were the only one who showed kindness when I had nothing to offer you. So I want you to be the one to hand me these jewels. Eli froze, stunned. The manager looked confused. Ma'am, surely one of the staff— No, Maria interrupted softly but firmly. He has earned the honor. Eli's hands trembled as he lifted the diamond necklace, its brilliance reflecting in his kind eyes. He placed it carefully in a velvet box and handed it to her. Maria took it with both hands, her expression calm but full of meaning. Thank you, Eli, she said softly. You remind me that decency still exists in simple hearts. She turned to the rest of the staff. And as for these jewels, she continued, gesturing to the glittering counter, they will be donated to a charity auction for women who were judged by their appearance and struggled to rise above it. The proceeds will go towards scholarships and rehabilitation programs. Gasps filled the store. Tina covered her mouth. The manager looked like he might faint. Maria continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I came here not to shame you, but to show you that people are not defined by their clothes, their faces, or their wealth. They are defined by how they treat others when no one is watching. Her words echoed in the silence. The chandeliers above reflected her calm light more beautifully than any jewel could. Eli, still holding the empty velvet tray, whispered, You're the kind of rich the world needs more of. Maria smiled. True wealth, she said softly, is measured by kindness, not money. The manager tried to speak, but no words came. His voice broke. Ms. Vale, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, Maria replied gently. Just treat the next person who walks through that door as if they were me. She closed the jewelry box and handed it to her assistant, who had just arrived. Send this to the charity house directly. Then she looked around the store one last time. Remember this moment, she said quietly. Every diamond here may sparkle, but none will ever shine brighter than a kind heart. As she walked toward the door, every staff member bowed slightly, not because of her wealth, but because they felt the weight of her grace. The bell chimed softly as she left, and the silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, filled with reflection. Outside, the sunlight wrapped around her like gold. The people who once laughed at her now watched her go with respect in their eyes. For the first time, the jewelry store truly sparkled, not from diamonds, but from the light of humility that Maria Vale left behind. A week had passed since Maria Vale's final visit, but the jewelry store still felt her presence in every corner. The staff spoke softly now, their voices carrying a gentleness that hadn't existed before. The laughter that once came from arrogance was gone, replaced by quiet respect. Even the manager, once proud and dismissive, now greeted every customer with genuine warmth. A gold plaque hung near the entrance, engraved words that made everyone pause before walking in. Respect has no price tag. MV. It had been Maria's parting gift. People started visiting the store not just for jewelry but for the story. News articles had spread everywhere. The plain woman who bought millions in jewels to teach kindness. Customers from across the city came to see the place where it happened. Some came out of curiosity. Others came to experience the change for themselves. Tina, the salesgirl, was different now. She no longer judged anyone by their clothes. When a tired-looking woman came in one day, holding a small purse and asking about a simple silver ring, Tina offered her the same respect she would give to a millionaire. She even smiled and said, Every person who walks in here deserves to shine. The woman left with tears in her eyes, and Tina realized that was real satisfaction. The manager too had changed. He had ordered a new training policy for every employee, the Maria Standard. It required every staff member to treat every guest with patience, dignity, and compassion, no matter who they were. The store's reputation, once cold and elite, became known for warmth and sincerity. Ironically, sales tripled, but the biggest change was in Eli. The janitor who had once swept floors now wore a neat suit and worked at Horizon Luxury Group as Maria's assistant. He still visited the old jewelry store sometimes just to say hello. The staff would stand when he entered, not because he was rich, but because they respected him. One morning, he came by with a small envelope. Inside was a letter from Maria. Tina read it out loud, her hands trembling slightly. To my friends at the store, I hope the lights still sparkle as bright as your hearts. Remember, what you sell is not gold or diamonds, it's grace, respect, and the feeling of being seen. When you meet someone plain, remember that even the simplest stone can hide a treasure beneath. Keep shining, not with pride, but with kindness. Maria Vale. The store fell silent. No one spoke for a while. The only sound was the gentle ticking of the clock and the soft hum of the lights above. Then the manager smiled faintly. She gave us more than a lesson, he said. She gave us a soul. From that day onward, every staff member kept Maria's letter framed behind the counter. They called it the heart of the store. Outside, people still pointed at the window display, where a single sapphire bracelet rested on black velvet. It wasn't for sale. Beneath it, a small tag read, "The bracelet that changed us." Every evening, as the sun dipped low and the store lights reflected off the glass, it looked like the bracelet was glowing with its own light, the light of a story that would never fade. And far away, in a tall glass building overlooking the city, Maria stood at her office window. She watched the streets below, her lips curving into a peaceful smile. She didn't need applause or attention. Her lesson had already taken root. She whispered to herself, "True beauty isn't worn. It's lived." The city lights shimmered back at her, as if bowing in quiet agreement.